Welcome to Tough Talk, where we work on getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. My name is BJ Robinson, pronouns he, they. I am your creator as well as your host of this platform. Tough Talk's a platform that was created originally to amplify Black voices as parts of different conversations that just started to take a bit more interest in the midst of 2020. And since then, we've kept on with many different conversations bringing together many different focuses, ideas, and questions that allow us all to gain a greater understanding about this world and enact a little change within ourselves and within the world around us. Tough Talk keeps on keeping on through a few different channels at this point. We are available on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. And we keep on in our conversations in a few different formats, including tough tea sessions, which are a bit more intimate conversations, often found on Instagram now, as well as tough roundtables, which you can follow on our YouTube playlist or on Facebook live sessions as they do occur. And we're going to have a rotating schedule that takes us into our third year of doing this work with our Tough Talk community Zoom room, where we do come together with one and all faces of our community to get into these conversations as well as sharing different ideas and questions that we're all trying to just sort through these days. This all started in the midst of a little pandemic around a thing called COVID 19, also known as coronavirus. And go figure, we're still doing that as well. So why not keep on keeping on with these conversations as it is now 2022? When did that happen? And that's kind of what we're focusing in on today in this conversation 2022. And where do we go from here? Well, that also it requires a bit of looking back on where we started at least a year ago from here. Where is the beginning ever really at? But a year ago at this time, we were also just getting things started again with some more tough talk, getting the tough round tables going, checking in on different things happening in the arts community here in San Diego, especially, as well as across the country. And then there was a bit of an interruption to all that focus with the insurrection that took place on the day that we even had a scheduled conversation to, again, focus elsewhere. But that became a bit of a focus and a priority as, it needed to be. And in some ways, it still is an urgent focus and priority, at least for some, if not for enough people. Um, in a lot of ways that I don't need to get into myself, I feel in my own experiences I can offer it into a conversation to anywhere that listens. Um, I feel as though many things haven't necessarily changed to facing things in a new way. I feel like a lot of things somehow went almost in a circle, or that if something new is happening, it's just a bit more of an innovation on an idea that's already come to face during this pandemic, frankly. Um, and I think that almost bothers me more, instead of feeling as though the world has progressed to something different. I think a lot of people, including myself, thought maybe this pandemic would be over before 2022. Um, I think there were a couple of moments that I liked to wager my bet in that direction. Although there were plenty of moments when I did very soundly say to myself and those around me that you couldn't tell me for sure what was going to happen 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years from now. I was saying that at one point in 2020 and even for a while into 2021. But I think I even started to feel that maybe this would all be over sooner rather than later. And yet, here we are in the now. And so the question really is, where do we go from here? I know I find myself having more challenges on trying to figure out what is the bigger picture, the further down the road scope, the goals and the plans that I think I can execute 6 months from now and a year from now and 3 years and 5 years and 10 years. Um, I feel like I'm ready to do the whole vision board thing again that I would do back in high school and figure out what do I see for myself happening through 4 years of college, and then what does that look like at 6 years out and 8 years and 10 years out. And when I moved out to California in 2009, I kind of stopped doing the so solid long trajectory visions because I wanted to be more present about living in the now. And if I'm so stuck on what things have to look like 10 years from now, then it's harder to really revel in the now, in the current. And I wanted to try and relinquish some of that burden I put on myself of thinking that if I don't have everything solid in how to execute going 5 years out, then I've already fallen on my face. I needed to cut myself a little more slack. And so I find myself coming back to these conversations at this point in 2022. And I say all this out loud as much for anyone listening as I say it for myself, because I also still battle myself in these same moments of how comfortable am I accepting the idea of, okay, I can't feel so solid, or I can't put so many eggs in the basket of what it will look like, what my life will be a year from now. I can't put my eggs in the basket, at least in this moment, so solidly on what it will look like 6 months from now. How do I feel about that overall? I think still just too uncomfortable. It's almost a different kind of soul searching arithmetic that I have to do. And I keep trying to check those numbers and recrunch them daily, if not 2 to 4 times a day. And I'm waiting for the calculations to change enough that I feel progress within myself. I don't know where we go from here. And I really ask that question for everyone and anyone to reflect on in their own minds, and be it listening to this somewhere else, be it checking this out on YouTube or on one of our social media platforms. Post your comments and share your 2 cents, or even send us an email at our running, well-functioning email address now, toughtalk.willbjrob@gmail.com. That is toughtalk.willbjrob@gmail.com. I'll put a fun graphic in there when this goes on YouTube. There are a lot of different parts of our future that we have to even take a beat and take a breath on to determine where we're going. And this week, I did have a couple of tea sessions and a couple of round tables, which was wonderful. Got to get to some great conversations with almost a dozen or so good friends, familiar faces and voices of our Tough Talk family and platform as well. Focusing in on just the current state of things and the adaptations, especially with focus on education, that we have had to combat and challenge and continuously face and adjust to and with and from, and we're still in that roller coaster of sorts right now in January of 2022. It's a bit of a roll of the die every day on, is this institution going to go virtual for a couple of weeks? Is this concert going to be postponed for a little bit of time? Is this restaurant going to shut down again for a little bit of time? And then how long will any of that go? In this past week, in this first full week of the year as it's been, we have hit a million positive cases in this country by the day. Here in San Diego County, we broke 7,000 cases a day, and then we broke 8,000 cases a day. Personally, I'm back in my full Rapunzel syndrome of just being home and keeping it here as much as I can. And it takes a lot of breathing and preparation to just say I'm still going to get my dog walks out and then try and do grocery store runs. And all of that is still done with absolute calculated timing on how likely I think I am to encounter other people, with a mask on, sometimes two even, and all the awareness to stay as distant as possible from others. And I know, again, that's just me in my own case. I don't wish anyone to be in the same place and perspective as I am. And if they are, then huzzah, know that you are not alone, because I am there with you. I I do want to be just back out and about. I want to be able to walk without worry of the virus. I mean, I want to be able to walk without worry, period. And that's a part of where these talks all did start back in June 2020. It would have been nice to just get to the idea of like walking without fear of being perceived as problematic or dangerous because I'm a black man, a queer man. Now I also want to be able to just walk without fear of, where is this virus lying next, and lingering, and how will it impact me further, because I've already felt impacts of all of this, and I think everyone and anyone who's alive at this point has felt impacts in some way or another. And so I hope for those days, at least in myself again, and I hope that it will be in 2022. I am far more understanding, I think, if it's not, because I'm understanding as time goes by in all of this, while still in this pandemic, that it will take more to get out of it than anyone may have thought at any point in time, including and especially myself. And I don't necessarily like how that feels, but that's okay. Not all feelings are always the best. They're not always positive. And so I can change the way I process this a bit, I think. If I kind of take my beat and circle back to remembering where I was when this pandemic started. Because the fact of the matter is, we're still in it. Got to beat my own fatigue, I think, by recalling, where was I when this started? What have I lost between then and now? I've lost a lot of patience, sure. What will that get me? Just less patience. And that's not going to help me. That's only going to harm me. And oddly enough, that kind of helps me check in with myself enough to say, okay, take my beat, take my breath, circle back, and got to keep on keeping on with what I know will help me to preserve myself and my focus and my health and my causes and my values in this pandemic. And another big part of that is remembering something else that I say to myself often, but remembering what it really means: to each their own. To each their own. We, the people of this world, we have had to face this pandemic with our own efforts from the start. Yes, there are policies and programs and a whole lot of politics at play that may or may not have impacted us directly and indirectly at different times throughout this pandemic. But overall, we have had to face this as individuals. We, especially in America, in the United States of America, I should say, not the rest of the Americas per se, although other parts of them. We here in the United States of America have had to face this with our own individualized efforts from the get-go. And that's not okay. But we have to remember that we all have been given the same lack of national strategy, of national implemented mandates and protocols and practices. Even when we all get on an airplane, whenever you get on an airplane, like a standard, I should say, airplane where you're flying with other passengers and all of that. We're all given instructions on how we need to function if in case of an emergency. It's part of how it goes. If you ride the bus, you can see different signs that give you different, in case of this, in case of that, are posted around. If you get your schedules, there's notes in there. If you really want to know, you can also go online, look ahead of time. There's instruction around. As a public, as the people, we were not given full sectioned national instruction, mandate, protocol, practice on how to navigate this pandemic. And so each of us have had to make a lot of choices on our own, have had to navigate this on our own with whatever our own resources have been. And so it's been very scattered. That's a tough truth that we can't forget. We have to remember that. That's how this started, and that's where this still is. There are so many different options on what people have chosen between then and now. And there are newer options coming out by the day on how to further navigate. Maybe that's why it's only getting tougher. So we got to find a way to keep some capacity, to take another beat and take another breath, and remember to each their own in this. It doesn't mean we always agree with it. It doesn't mean it's what we would choose for ourselves. And at the very same time, it doesn't mean that we necessarily get to hold other people's choices against them from our own perspective. We still have to preserve ourselves, and we have to make our choices for ourselves. But we don't need to enact anything that's causing harm, that's hurting others. I know people around me who are out and about more than I am. And again, I say that as the person who's, like just dodging it for dog walks and going to the grocery outlet, bargain market at the corner, literally at the corner. Otherwise, I don't go anywhere. And so essentially everyone I know, most people I know, are going out and about more than I am. And that's okay. I have to tell myself that's okay, because to each of them, it's their lives and their own choices they have to make. I have to still make my choices for myself. Do I see the people I know? Not in person. No, I don't. And that's okay, because we're all making our choices that we need to make at the end of the day. Because we're still in this pandemic. It might be the toughest truth to get us started here in 2022, that we all need to acknowledge and understand that we're still in this pandemic, and that maybe the changes we need to make for ourselves are to remember what were we doing to get ourselves settled in this when it started, and how do we incorporate some of that back into our lives, or how do we make new adjustments that still allow us to find that same odd sort of solace. That's what we preserve. That's how we keep on keeping on in this. And yeah, it's surreal. It's a bit terrifying at times. I've done more nervous laughter in these first 7 days of 2022 than I think I did through all of 2021, because I just feel like one truly never knows by the moment now. Do one. It's tough. And that's okay.